welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 371 for the 29th of November 2015. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. That funny buzzing noise in the background you can hear is the air conditioning, because sometimes it's very hard to do the voiceover work for this show in a closed room on a hot day. I hope you'll understand. I quite like air conditioning. It's good to live in an age of science which brings us air conditioning, especially when you live in a hot country like Australia. What's coming up on this week's show? Well, it's Maynard Spooky Action. More about Maynard coming up later in the show. There's a special night he's putting on in Newcastle where he's going to be playing the old Spaceballs movie. It's called Maynard The Farce Awakens. More about that later. Hope to see you there. But anyway, Maynard, to kick off the show, Maynard chats to Dr. Mel Thompson, who is at the Australian Skeptics National Convention. Mel's going to be chatting about her problems, health problems, and how she's tackling them, and some interesting advice for people with similar problems and the rest of us, how to relate to people who have certain medical problems. That's a bit cryptic, isn't it? I think you'll enjoy this interview with Maynard, conducted in his usual style. Following that, it's Evidence Please with Jo Alabaster. This week, Jo's going to be looking at the crazy alternative medical practice of cupping. Cupping. This is where you put hot cup-shaped containers on your back or your front, I don't know, and heat them up beforehand, and it's supposed to draw out the toxins and all this sort of new age weaselly, wishy-washy stuff. Does it? Probably not, but Jo will tell us all about that coming up in Jo's Evidence Please. Then it's a week in science from the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. Hello everybody there. I do like visiting that institution. I did that about a year ago. Had a wonderful time. Then to round off the show, I speak to Tamara Robertson from California, who's involved in the new series, which you may have heard being talked about here on the Skeptic Zone, The Feeding Tube, all about food myths. What's her story? Does she like food? I like food. We'll find out coming up to round off the show. Now, before we get stuck into the show, a big thank you to everybody who have sent me birthday wishes and greetings. Thank you very much. Yes, yesterday was my birthday. The big 5-0. Why don't they call it the small 5-0? The minor 5-0, So, what did somebody call me the other day? They called me a junior geriatric. Hello to all the 1965ers out there. We've made it to 50. Unbelievable. Most of us. There's a few yet to come, actually in December. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and have the last slice of the birthday cake, which was red velvet with cheesecake icing or frosting. My goodness me, it was almost worth waiting 50 years for. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, I was watching something pretty interesting on stage earlier. I was looking up and I saw inside this woman's body. I saw your staples.
I know, but they're great, aren't they?
Who are you and why are you doing here?
I'm Dr. Melanie Thompson. I'm here to talk about my experiences as a patient, as a recently diagnosed MS patient, but as well as how I'm marrying that with my professional career as a evidence-based medicine practitioner, as a scientist working at a medical school.
Now, as a doctor yourself, did you do a self-diagnosis on you? Because doctors can get a bit, paranoid.
I'm not that kind of doctor.
Oh, okay.
I'm a science doctor, PhD. I'm not a doctor, as it were. Basically my diagnosis was quite challenging at the start because I thought it was based on... we all thought, including various ophthalmologists, etc., that it was sort of acquired brain injury from a fender-bender accident I'd had 2 days before I lost my sight. So we were all focusing on that. And by the time they actually stuck me in an MRI machine, I had got my vision back and I was able to drive again. So I thought nothing of it. I thought, well, this MRI is just going to be just a run-of-the-mill. They're going to tell me there's nothing wrong with me and send me home for Christmas.
And they saw those little white bits.
They weren't little. They were massive. 2-centimetre tumour-factive lesion, as well as some other smaller lesions. So they were pretty substantial brain lesions.
Well, and look, having spoken with Tim Ferguson about this, about his reaction to that, what do you go into? How does one handle that? I mean, I know it's a very blunt question, but I can't really get my head around that.
Okay, so the first thing I did was buy Tim Ferguson's book.
Carry a big stick.
Yes. So the first thing I did was buy that. I sent my husband down the local bookshop and said, come back with Tim Ferguson's I Carry a Big Stick. And I went, because I'd follow Tim on Twitter and knew his issues, obviously, and was a big fan girl when I was a child. Teenager, it wasn't quite legal. Look,
there's a lot of teenage angst at their gigs at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And I never got to go because I think they left the country before I turned 18 and was able to go to any of their gigs. So I've always had this. I finally went to see them do a gig at Geelong maybe 6 months ago, first time, and I'm like, yay! So reading his book was really interesting, and his approach really I've got this thing, and I like the chapter where he's like going, and here's my spiel, don't try and give me the woo, and I was like, yeah. You go, guy.
Yeah, well, he's had tapeworms offered to him, or hookworms. That's the one I find weird.
I mean, because I'm an infectious disease expert, I previously had spent a lot of time on the Stop the AVN hashtag, helping out the really great group of people that have been driving change in that way. And the vaccine trolls tried to tell me. I had one tell me that my MS was caused by a vaccine injury. And I went, thanks for that. Yeah. Block.
How would you even relate that back?
Well, it's autoimmune injury, isn't it, MS?
Yeah, but over the entire life?
Yeah, and that's when I was... the thing that I was sort of talking to this troll about was, well, if that is true, there'll be a lot more people with MS. Yeah? There'll be a lot more people. There's not that many people with MS, so really... Your vaccines cause MS is not holding water with me right now.
Oh, this is what I was told only last week when I was talking about... They said, Tim Ferguson? They go, yeah, well, everyone I know who's got MS has got pale skin and they don't get a lot of sunlight, so it's probably caused by lack of vitamin D. That's what I was told in one go, because they know two people that... And Tim didn't go out much during the day because he's working in clubs at night. I go, well, yeah, but no. Well, is there any vitamin D link at all?
There is a vitamin D link, but it's only been shown scientifically recently. I am a sun lover.
Oh, okay.
I spend my whole time outside without sunscreen, much to the horror of my GP. And this was before I had my MS diagnosis.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I lived in the UK for 12 years. And frankly, when you live in the UK, especially the northern UK in York, where I lived, you don't see the sun much. And when it comes out, you're literally out there in your bikini going, burn me, burn me.
Let me tell you, at lunchtime, everybody's out there with their shirt off, in their undies, out of the office, in the park. Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing.
Getting their vitamin D, because the sun's much weaker there. And so in Australia, you can get vitamin D just on your arms and your face within 10 minutes. Yeah. But in England, you really have to work at it. And you have to take a summer holiday. And so now I'm actually committed to taking winter sun holidays now that I've had my diagnosis. So I went to Fiji, topped up the tan, and my vitamin D levels have been recommended to stay above 75.
Okay.
The average for a normal person is 50.
Are tablets any good for this or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they can be. I don't take them personally, but my GP is trying to convince me. I'm always of the opinion, scientifically, you actually need the sunlight, the UV light, to actually convert the tablets, the vitamin D you take, into an activated form. So you do need that step with the UV. But having said that, if you take a lot of supplements, then there's a lot more vitamin D waiting to be activated.
Oh, okay.
And so it tends to be a self-perpetuating cycle.
Oh, okay. And what other woo have you had shoved your way? I mean,
so many woo.
And you must be just up for an argument so much, like people that, so, you know, you can get really indignant more than anything.
I do. It's been great. Just, I was like having a child diagnosed with autism, gave me a bit of that, where I came across patients that fellow like mothers at the school gate who have children that were diagnosed with autism, and they'd be like, oh yeah, we took him to a naturopath, and maybe you know that, and I said, I work on C. diff, bacteria. Oh yeah, we took our son to this doctor, biomedical doctor, who gave him high dose beta lactamases or something, and I'm like, really, don't do that. Don't do that. And I said, but if it makes you feel better that you're doing something for your child, that's what you're addressing here. And that's what people don't understand, is that they feel powerless against these diseases that have no cures, and they feel they need to be doing something to make themselves feel better and sleep at night.
Well, yeah, this is something I spoke to about with Nicole Rogerson about her issues with that there's a touch of is there a touch of parental guilt there or something? You feel like there's something you've done and that you want to undo it. Is that part of it? Or?
Well, I mean, you do get that, and listening to Loretta talk about her cancer and how this whole fighter warrior meme that goes on, and I got that, and I was like, you can off with that. And actually, if you read, I've got a WordPress blog thing on it, and people still do it to me, and I'm politely saying to them, please don't give me the fighter meme. I said, all I'm doing now, I said, this is an incurable disease. Oh, you've got to have hope. I'm like, no, I don't. I do not have to have hope.
No, I've heard that the fighter meme is really annoying too, because in people I've spoken to with breast cancer that have been remission, not remission, they say it's not a fight. It's like being on a horrible roller coaster that sometimes slows down, then it slows up, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Is that an analogy that's good?
Maybe, but the point about fighting is that you have agency over your disease, yeah? Now, you have agency over various things in your life, like what car you buy, what job you do, what university degrees you study, but you do not have agency against various things. And I presented 3 major life events that happened to me, and the third one was my MS diagnosis. But I had a miscarriage, I had my son being diagnosed with autism, and then I had my MS diagnosis. Now, I had no agency over those things. There was nothing I could have done about that. So there's no point telling someone they're a fighter, because it means that if they're not fighting hard enough, they're just not trying. And that is just wrong. And you shouldn't lay that kind of guilt on someone. And that's what happens.
Yeah,
you can fight this, you can fight this.
So you're not thinking positively enough about it or something?
Yeah, it's your fault because you're not trying. You're not fighting the cancer, because if you just tried and ate some organic food, you'd be fine.
And do you think it is the further people are away from that kind of thing, the more they think like that?
I think so, and I think the rise of social media, which I use a lot, has been interesting in that way, because you get a lot of family and friends that are ignorant that try and lay this stuff on. Now, I spoke in my talk about a woman I worked with that has an inoperable brain tumour of the kind that Mel Gibson thought she had, well, pretended she had. Now, it's going to kill her. She may never see her daughter, she was pregnant with when she was diagnosed with it. She may never see her daughter grow up, because it's slow growing, but it's growing. And so she had a aunt turn up on her doorstep one Friday evening when she was trying to have, a quiet Chardonnay in the garden, and say to her, I met this guy down the park who owns an organic food shop, and basically she was describing Mel Gibson's book, and he said that he's got this book with this woman that's cured her brain tumour with her diet just by eating organic. And this was being told to Michelle. Now, that this woman is got a PhD in science, okay? So she was looking at her aunt going, thank you for that unsolicited advice. So, yeah, this kind of well-meaning unsolicited advice really creates this culture of other people wanting you to do something about your disease because they've read about it on some website. Yeah,
and they haven't really thought a lot about it before they've come to you. Yeah.
And they don't know what the effect is when they say that to another person.
Yeah.
Because, they might be... It's well-intentioned, but it's quite damaging.
And psychologically, how can you prepare yourself for this sort of thing? That's a very naive question I'm asking, but that's because I wonder.
Yeah, well, it's basically you just have to develop resilience to that kind of thing. You do need to be prepared to cut people off that you consider toxic.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
And they may be family members. So it's hard and it can be isolating. And then, I have that a lot where I tend to be the sort of black sheep of my family because I'm...
Oh, Christmas must be great with you.
Yeah, no. It was really not great. And basically because, you know, the rest of my family think Andrew Bolt's a great guy and is more scientifically aware than I am.
Wow.
And so that's always, you know, comfortable. And so you've got to be prepared to remove toxic people from your life. Now, if you want to talk toxins, it's mostly psychological toxins,
yes,
I find.
True.
And you need to find a support network, and I was very lucky, as I said in my talk. The people that responded when I was in my, you know, the Christmas New Year nightmare that I had over Christmas, I had my Twitter buddies. Now, a lot of them were skeptics. Some of them were Nobel Prize winning scientists. They came and visited me at my house to say, hi, how you going?
Wow.
Now, and that was amazing. It was really, really amazing. And that kind of support that I got from the skeptics family particularly was just so grateful for.
Look, and you're not sitting around either. You're getting out there and doing some activism. You were talking at the end of your talk about how our regulatory authorities aren't doing much. And could you explain to the listener what was said by one of them about how if there's someone doing a shonky thing medically, that they've got to consider the business owner? Could you explain that again?
Yeah, so basically the TGA is not fully independent, and the TGA is required by their code to basically address the needs of all of the stakeholders. Now, they are the stakeholders in this particular case, in the case of Woo, is the pharmacies who sell Blackmores, you know, Super and Swiss vitamins, which most of that stuff's not evidence-based. They're the naturopaths, they're the complementary therapists, they're the acupuncture people. All of those people are making a lot of money in the economy. And bringing in tax.
And so the fact that they're actually making money is taken into account, that they're an active business and they don't want to send them broke.
Correct. That has to be taken into account.
Wow.
Big evidence is not the only thing that is to be taken into account. Business requirement is also to be taken into account. And that was the most frightening thing I've ever heard anyone say. And that was from basically the guy second in charge of the TGA.
Did you spit it?
No, I was at the floor trying to be professional. But I was thinking that. And it was, and you could see them. And when they were questioned by the scientists and the practitioners and the people in the audience, they said, look, it's just the way it is. That's just the law. That's our code, that's our guidelines. We can't do anything about it.
Okay, well.
But, so, and that's the thing. If it's basically, I was saying to Loretta, who was speaking on the TGA just now, I spoke to her and I said, look, we just need to burn the TGA down completely.
Right, so that means replace it with something else, perhaps?
Yes, and start again. Basically, a lot of it is funded by industry bodies. So
and is that the way it's grown up?
Pretty much. It's been a sort of organic thing and no one's really paid attention, and most of the proper regulatory stuff is done by the FDA or the European regulatory agencies for biotechnology, and literally the TGA is rubber stamp.
Okay.
And the rubber stamp is really not helping in this case, you know.
So Mel, what can we do there? The people listening that want to have a bit of activism going on, is there someone we can write to, a website we can go to, something where we can make you feel a little bit better about what's going on?
Well, I'm just, I get angry, but it's righteous anger, and so it makes me feel good, and it's a good feedback loop for me. But basically, really, the best thing to do is to write to your local MPs and say, close the loophole. The TGA loophole, and particularly the one I was presenting, was autologous stem cell transplants. Now, we're hoping that's going to close soon. They've had all the consultation with the stakeholders period. And, the NHMRC and the Australian Academy of Science have all basically said, no, this has got to stop. Got to stop. But, also the naturopathy and, all the other people are saying, no, it's really useful. And then some medical doctors who, particularly the people doing knee cartilage operations where there's been some successes, they are in the middle saying, no, we don't want to be regulated because we won't be able to provide it to our patients.
Oh, okay, so there is some evidence that it may work in that case.
Only in particular cases, but again, the evidence isn't fully formed. It needs more clinical trials. Okay. But again, these practitioners, I've spoken to him and his commercial backers at these meetings, because I go to them and I speak to them, and basically they're saying, well, we want the evidence, but they're quite happy to still take people's money that aren't eligible for their trials. So they have a trial eligibility under their normal clinical trials guidelines, but then the people that aren't, I was like, sorry, we can't put you on the free trial, but you can pay 10 grand to have it anyway.
Okay.
It might. We're thinking it's pretty much evidence-based, but we haven't actually created the evidence base for that yet. But just in case, give us 10 grand, we'll give you the stem cells.
I like that. It's pretty much evidence-based.
Nearly. So almost.
Yeah. Look, you could, if you jump off the building, pretty much you could be okay, but no, maybe not. It's evidence-based, probably not. No.
Exactly. You've never jumped off a building before, we don't know.
Yeah.
But this is it. It's very frustrating in that way.
And what's your website or your blog where we could check out what's going on with you?
Yeah, well, I've got a sort of mixed bag on my blog, but my blog is Dr Mel Thompson, without a P, at wordpress.com.
Okay, and make sure I give you a shout out on Bunga Bunga with Tim Ferguson. That's a podcast I do with him.
Yeah, no, he's great. I haven't met him yet, but
Haven't you met him?
No, I'm desperate to meet him. But I mean, you go to. I went to his gig, and it was absolutely mind blowing. That it was the first time I felt like a cool kid because I've got MS. I was like, oh my God, I'm such a cool kid, I've got MS.
Look, the thing I like about Tim Ferguson is that, I remember one Tim said, look, Maynard, the worst thing about having MS and the worst thing I will ever say is that it's boring.
It is.
He finds it boring. Because he has people...
Better things to do.
He has people come up to him and go, oh, it's so sorry, it's so terrible this happened to you. And he goes, look...
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I don't find it a problem. Really.
It's like, well, it's boring. And that's the worst it's going to be. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just, to be able to have that role model of someone who is basically getting on with things. And what is it? I think the gig I went to, the classic line was, all you guys that think you're okay, talk.
Yes.
And I just went, yes, that is so right. And that's basically my last slide was pretty much, life's too short, buy the shoes. I think shoes. I didn't swear.
So you can still wear heels quite well, can't you?
Yes, I can, yes.
Look at that. And you were rating how much money was being wasted by shoes.
Well, basically,
just explain.
A pair of Louboutins is worth between sort of $8 and, depending if it's on sale or not, between $8 and $1,000.
And women that like shoes love those shoes?
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to buy a pair for my 40th birthday, but I got MS instead. Oh. Really, I feel cheated. Cheated.
Yeah, that's one you can't send back either.
No,
really.
No. I can't get a refund on that.
Wow. So it's good to see you using humour, very much like Tim.
Yeah, exactly. He's the master.
Yeah.
I've always used humour in my work, and using humour to communicate science is something. It's just me. It's my personality. Okay. And I can't do the earnestness. I lose it. I just can't keep a straight face with earnest. I have to make a joke.
Hello, Richard and all the listeners of Skeptic Zone. My name is Ran Levy, and I'm the producer and co-host of Curious Mind. It's a podcast about science, technology, and history at www.cmpod.net. Each episode will bring you interesting stories from a wide range of subjects, from physics to astronomy and medicine, from arts to science fiction. We strive for the highest production values both in content and in delivery. We already have on the air episodes about German U-boats in the Second World War, about the history of X-rays and the war of currents between Tesla and Edison. Come and have a listen. www.cmpod.net.
What we want is some more evidence, please. Here's Jo Alabaster.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. This week, cupping therapy. An alternative health practice, cupping therapy, is the placement of cups made of plastic, glass or silicone, or more traditionally, horn, earthenware or bamboo, on the skin, often on the back or neck, sometimes elsewhere, including the face. Using suction, skin is drawn into the cup. Some of the claims that are associated with cupping are that it is drawing out toxins, dispelling stagnation, and or improving the flow of energy. Cupping is practiced as part of traditional Chinese medicine and also in the Muslim world, where it's known as hijama. There are two forms of cupping therapy: wet cupping, in which superficial lacerations are made on the skin and blood is pulled through into the cup, or dry cupping, in which there are no cuts made and blood is pulled to the skin but not through. There are several methods by which suction is created. Fire cupping is when a cotton ball soaked in alcohol or something similar is held with forceps, set alight, then briefly placed in the cup before the cup is placed onto the skin. The heat causes the air to expand within the cup and then contracts as it cools, and a vacuum is created. Cups with valves to be used in conjunction with a suction pump are also available. Its efficacy? Well, it's good at creating bruises, and in the case of wet cupping, scars. Fire cupping carries the risk of burns, and skin infections are a risk whenever skin is damaged and broken. Cupping can create blisters. Blood clots are a potential side effect. Blood loss during wet cupping can cause lightheadedness similar to that experienced when donating blood. From a risk-benefit perspective, cupping is all risk and zero benefit. There's no good evidence that cupping can treat any medical condition or have effects beyond that of a placebo. As I mentioned earlier, though, the wet cupping method referred to as hijama is practiced in the Muslim world and was reportedly endorsed by Muhammad, so for some people cupping is as much a religious practice as it is medical. Edzard Ernst and Simon Singh evaluate the lack of scientific evidence for cupping therapy in their book Trick or Treatment: Alternative Medicine on Trial, which is well worth a read if you're interested in alternative medicine and haven't already got a copy. Cupping therapy made it into the media this week when popular New Zealand rugby player Sonny Bill Williams tweeted a photo of himself undergoing hijama cupping therapy, accompanied by the text "Detox Time" and an emoji with hands raised in celebration. The photograph is a little gory. Sonny's leaning forwards with 5 cups attached to his back and 2 smaller ones on his neck, all splattered with blood which is pooling in the bases of the cups. By the look of the valves, they're attached via manual suction rather than fire cupping. The first tweet in response to this photo came from our friend Dr Brad McKay, a GP with an extensive public profile, who replied, quote, "Looks painful and no evidence that cupping is good for you. Like getting giant hickeys on your back. Ouch!" End quote. This was picked up by several media outlets. The Sydney Morning Herald, the Daily Mail. Mashable interviewed Dr Brad and published several statements he made from an evidence-based medicine perspective on the lack of evidence for any benefits from cupping therapy beyond the religious. Unfortunately, they also spoke with a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner who uses cupping therapy, which was a bit of a disappointment from a false balance perspective. But other media outlets who quote mined from the Mashable article, including the Huffington Post and the Independent, tended to stick to just offering Dr Brad's perspective. This from Mashable, quote, "What you're seeing in the picture is basically leaking blood from cupping a swollen area of skin," end quote, he said. Quote, "The whole theory about the cupping technique is that it's releasing toxins, releasing bad blood from your body, but basically it's just causing you to get a bruise underneath your skin. There's no therapeutic benefit at all," end quote. McKay said a number of his patients have treated themselves with cupping for a number of ailments, from back pain to pneumonia, and that this has made him concerned. Quote, "Even if you're just using the normal cupping technique, it can rub against the skin and cause a significant abrasion, permanent scarring, and can even cause infections if you're breaking down the skin barrier," end quote. So there we have it. Some good information on an alternative therapy making it into international news, thanks to a couple of tweets. Sometimes it's really worth politely speaking up on social media, even if you don't change the mind of the person you're responding to. Others may see what you've said. For more evidence, please keep listening to the Skeptic Zone. You can also check out my blog at evidenceplease.net and contact me via Twitter at Jo Alabaster.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. Imagine advertising so good that it got inside your brain and found a buy button. Well, we can't do that yet, but as neuromarketing improves, people are afraid that advertising will get so good that it will control your mind. Up to 95% of the brain activity that happens when we make a decision happens at a subconscious level. That means that we can't control it and we're not even aware of it. Neuromarketing tries to tap into this brain activity to understand how we make decisions about what we buy. Let's say a company wants to test how effective their new TV ad will be, and they decide to use neuromarketing. They get a whole bunch of people, hook them up to an EEG machine to measure their brain's electrical activity, and then get them to watch the ad. The neuromarketers may also track the subject's eye movements and tiny changes in their facial expressions, or they could even be given an MRI. They then put all this information together to see whether the ad promotes positive or negative feelings, how engaged the customer was, and when they started to tune out. It's not surprising that people are a bit worried about where this could lead. Imagine a perfect ad which turns on your brain so much that it overrides the part of your brain that makes conscious decisions. This is what ethicists call our brain's buy button. It means that you start to lose control of your own decisions. But there's no need to freak out because we don't have the knowledge to do this yet, and lots of researchers are sceptical about there even being a buy button because our brains are incredibly good at adapting, meaning that our frontal cortex will always be able to override our subconscious. But it's still an area that needs to be closely monitored, and there are calls to put strict guidelines in place to protect consumers. You're listening to A Week in Science from RiAus, and now 4 fast facts about neuromarketing. When you make a decision, most of your brain activity happens in the frontal cortex, which is also the part of the brain that helps us to learn from past experiences. Our brains account for just 2% of our body mass, but uses 20% of our energy. Your subconscious can process information 200,000 times faster than conscious thought. And lots of big companies already use neuromarketing. Volvo, for instance, recently released a video on YouTube where they used EEGs to test how customers responded emotionally to their new car design. That's it for this week in science. For more information about neuromarketing, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. I'm Kieran Groom, and we'll catch you next week.
Now here's a message for all of you Maynard fans, especially Maynard fans in Newcastle. Maynard is holding a special night, Maynard The Farce Awakens. This is on the 5th of December from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. The Royal Exchange at 32 to 34 Bolton Street, Newcastle. The new Star Wars movie is upon Maynard. He wants to remind you how poopy all the others have been with a highly intellectual evening of the Mel Brooks classic Spaceballs, plus a few movies from the Maynard archives. $10, and there will be an intermission, set to ludicrous speed, and we'll be there before you can say, Chad Vader? This promises to be a fun night, folks. I'm going to be there, the Royal Exchange. That's Saturday the 5th. And for more information, head to Facebook. Head to Facebook and type in Maynard The Farce Awakens. If you go to www.skepticzone.tv, in the show notes for this episode, there'll be a link. Help out a skeptic in Mexico. One of the things I like about the skeptical community worldwide is sometimes we come together to really help out each other. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Daniel Zepeda in Mexico does need your help at the moment. He wants to buy an oven to bake some bread, to sell that bread to keep himself going. He's been doing skeptical activism for some time now, including some videos on the old applied kinesiology. I can certainly relate to debunking that. He's after your help to help him buy an oven so he can bake some bread so he can, well, basically get back on his feet and help himself. Check it out. Go to www.skepticzone.tv and click the link in this week's show notes. And I'm pleased to say that Daniel is already a quarter of the way to his goal. Maybe one day, Daniel, I'd like to come to Mexico and enjoy munching on your delicious-looking bread. Let's help out a fellow skeptic. Thank you, everybody. Joining me now all the way from Los Angeles, a city I've always wanted to visit. Oh, hang on, I do frequently. Have you ever been to the La Brea tar pits, folks? That's worth a visit. Forget Hollywood. Anyway, joining me all the way from Los Angeles is Tamara Robinson. Hello, Tamara.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing really well, and it's great to meet you virtually via this wonderful video thing hookup we have, because I want to have a quick chat to you and let our listeners know more about a very interesting new video series called The Feeding Tube, or just Feeding Tube, because the website the URL is feedingtube, one word, .tv. What can you tell me about it, and why do you appear?
The Feeding Tube is a really neat new video series that we're hosting where we are basically looking at all of today's food myths or food fads and going and really kind of studying the science behind them, looking at whether or not what we perceive as an issue or a benefit for multiple diets is really based in reality at all, or if it's more the nature of the blog and the networks where people just get online and talk about what they think versus what's actually based in reality. So we want to be a source for people that are really looking at a diet to be able to say, okay, is this real or is it just a fad? So we're pretty excited to get the video blog or vlog, as we've been calling it, started and going.
That's great. Now, there's already one episode online that's about antibiotics in beef, which is interesting. Now, they're not going to be long videos, are they? They're very concise, very short bits of information.
They are. They're going to be pretty short. All of our episodes are about 3 minutes, and we try to make them suitable for all audiences. They're also utilized in the education world. So people that are in university studying food science are actually watching these as part of their curricula, which is a really neat additional benefit for us. So we get a lot of really good insights from professors and people in the science world to ensure that our content is dead on and that we are sharing the best and most useful knowledge about each diet.
That's really good to hear. That's really good to hear. The video looks great. The first episode certainly looks very slick and professional. And I notice it's going to be a sort of a fan funding or crowdfunding, so people can chip in, contribute to get the next episode produced. And the next episode, I'm just having a quick glance over at the website now, I see is already 50% funded, and there's not much money needed to actually get a new episode going. And the next episode looks very interesting, is about paleo diets, caveman diets as they sometimes call them. So that promises to be an interesting little video coming up.
Yes, absolutely. The paleo diet or the caveman diet is one that has gotten very big, especially in the CrossFit communities, and as people start to really question gluten in their diets overall. And we're living in an era where almost everyone is gluten-free, gluten intolerant, or gluten questionable. So it's going to be a good episode to really start to dive into that and see what part of it really is health beneficial and what part may just be a little bit of fodder to make it seem more important. So we like to play devil's advocate. We don't take one stance or the other. We just give the science the way it is and let everyone make an educated decision.
And tell me, what's your background and what else do you do?
I'm actually a chemical and biomolecular engineer by training. I spent the first few years out of college designing and building vaccines facilities, and then actually got the chance to spent some time in Europe during the pandemic making swine flu vaccine for the U.S.
Wow.
And then I spent the last year of that running a viral manufacturing department, working with the CDC and World Health Organization, trying to really look at the first clinical material for avian flu. And then from there, I've spent some time in the green science field running pilot plants for biodiesel. I've spent some time in the packaging perspective, looking at clarifiers and nucleators for everyday use plastics. And then the last bit of it spent in the post-treatment of packaging for shelf life stability. So kind of have a very varied background in science, but always kind of focused on either medical or consumer product goods. So it's been kind of neat to kind of meld those sciences together in this series and really start to look at both how the food on the shelf affects you and then how the chemistry of the actual components in the food affects your body. So.
But you're no stranger to the limelight either. I noticed that you're also a director.
I am. I'm actually. I'm an actor. I work as a producer for indie stuff. I do casting for indie stuff. So, I just joined the union for acting and have been doing some big features. So, I spend some time in front of the camera and behind. I actually am kind of focusing now more in front of the camera. But I still continue to spend a lot of time in science. It's funny, you sit on a production team and you start talking to them about just normal how to run an efficient set, and they're like minds blown, you know. So they don't expect engineers to be hanging out behind the scenes with them. But we do add to the efficiency.
It sounds fascinating. Well, look, I'm glad you're involved with this. It's a great series, folks. It's just getting started. The first episode's really interesting. That website again is feedingtube, that's one word, feedingtube.tv. Go there. The video's right on the first page, and you can find out a little bit more about it. Well, Tamara, I wish you all success with the series. We're looking forward to the next episode coming out soon, and episodes after that. And I tell you what, a bit later on, maybe next year when there's a few more episodes out there, we'll have another chat.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for your time, and I hope everyone enjoys the series. Definitely give us your feedback. We're always looking for new topics to cover, so...
Told me that aliens really exist. You met them and swooned with elation.
Hi. Are you a skeptic living somewhere in Europe or simply interested in what like-minded people are up to in countries around here? I have good news for you. There is a new podcast out there with the aim of helping you connect with all those European skeptics. The ESP, European Skeptics Podcast, a bi-weekly show coming out on the 18th of November on SoundCloud, iTunes and Stitcher. Come and visit our website, theesp.eu, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and help us keep the project genuinely international and interactive. Let us provide you with a real ESP experience.
It's driving me crazy. Guess which one of us is to see? You're driving me crazy. You're driving me crazy. I don't know how you can believe.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and thank you to those people who visit Mr. Cat's origami jewellery store. The money made by that store does help the Skeptic Zone keep going, so I appreciate it very much. And if you want to buy something for Christmas, now's the time to do it, especially if you live outside Australia because of the postage. Coming up on next week's show, even more from Maynard. Vox pops and all sorts of things. some skeptics in the pub here in Sydney. Oh, that's coming up, by the way, you people in Sydney, this Thursday night at the Crown Hotel from 6 p.m. That's the Crown Hotel in the city near Central Station, between Central and Museum stations. Everybody's welcome. So some more from that. And, well, who knows? Who knows? A mixture of things. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.